Valerie Hayes had sent me a text at exactly 6:47 p.m. Monthly household reconciliation. Water $34.20. Electric $58.90. Gas $22.50. Internet $19.95. HOA $112. Plus your occupancy fee $550. Total $797.55. Due today by midnight. Need receipt. I stared at the message for a long moment. The numbers were exactly as she'd itemized them in the shared spreadsheet we kept on the kitchen counter, the one with columns for Anthony contribution and Valerie contribution and a running balance that always seemed to favor her. I typed back, just got out of a meeting that ran long. I'm exhausted. I'll transfer first thing tomorrow morning. She responded in 3 seconds. Policy doesn't recognize exhaustion. Deadline is tonight. I pocketed the phone and grabbed my jacket. The drive home took 45 minutes through traffic that had no mercy on a man who'd just been told his inconsistent performance might lead to a PIP. I stopped at a red light and caught my reflection in the rearview mirror at 38 years old. Anthony Reed, senior systems analyst, making $85,000 a year. The kind of job that paid the bills and nothing else. The kind of job I'd chosen. I pulled into the parking garage of the complex we shared. She owned the condo, a fact she reminded me of every 30 days when the occupancy fee came due. The elevator ride up to the 4th floor was silent. I could feel the weight of the day pressing down on my shoulders like a physical thing. When I opened the door, Valerie was standing in the living room with her arms crossed. She'd just gotten back from her Pilates class. I could tell by the Lululemon leggings and the way her hair was pulled back in that tight, severe bun she wore when she meant business. She was 33, 2 years younger than me, and she managed a mid-sized medical supply company. She made $78,000 a year, slightly less than I did, but you'd never know it by the way she carried herself. The transfer, she said. No hello. No how was your day? Val, I told you. I'll do in the morning. The policy. I know the policy, that I wrote half of it. I set my bag down by the door and walked past her into the kitchen. The fridge was stocked with pre-portioned meal prep containers, each labeled with a date and calorie count, Valerie's system, of course. I'd contributed exactly 0 to the organization of our domestic life. Half. You wrote the section on shared grocery costs. I wrote the occupancy clause. Because you wanted to monetize my presence in your home. I opened the fridge and pulled out the container labeled a Monday dinner, lemon chicken, 420 calories. She'd started labeling everything with initials when she noticed I'd accidentally eaten one of her meals 2 months ago. She'd invoiced me for it. Monetize? That's a strong word. She followed me into the kitchen, her bare feet silent on the hardwood. You live here. You use the water, the electricity, the internet. You generate wear and tear on the appliances and the floors. Why shouldn't you contribute proportionally? Proportionally, right. I peeled the plastic off the container and put it in the microwave. We're married, Valerie. We're not roommates who split the cable bill. Which is why the occupancy fee is discounted. Market rate for this unit would be at least $850. I'm charging you $550. That's the marriage discount. I wanted to point out that she'd also charged me a visitor surcharge when my brother came to stay for 2 nights last Christmas, but I was too tired to fight. The microwave beeped. I pulled the container out and sat at the kitchen island. She sat across from me. The distance between us was exactly 2 feet, but it felt like a canyon. Anthony. Her voice softened slightly, which meant she was about to pivot. This isn't about the money. You know that it's about respect, about keeping our commitments. When we agreed to this system, you said you understood, you wanted it. You said you never felt more free in a relationship. I'd said a lot of things 3 years ago. I met Valerie Hayes at a networking event downtown back when I was still pretending to be someone I wasn't. She'd walked up to me after a panel discussion and asked if I'd ever considered moving out of government tech and into the private sector. I said I was happy where I was. She said that was admirably unambitious. I laughed. Most people didn't say things like that to my face. Most people were afraid of me. Not Valerie. She had no idea who I really was. To her, I was just Anthony Reed, mid-level code jockey with a 401k that wouldn't even cover a down payment on a condo. She liked me anyway. Or at least, I'd convinced myself she did. We dated for 8 months. She was blunt, organized, and refreshingly uninterested in my potential. She paid for her half of every dinner, sent me Venmo requests for concert tickets, and never once asked if I had family money. When I proposed, she said yes on 2 conditions. I want a small wedding, and I want a clear financial agreement. She drafted the document herself, 47 pages. She'd found a template online and customized it. The occupancy clause was her own addition. She bought the condo with a small inheritance from her grandmother, and she wanted to protect that asset. I signed it without reading every line. That was my first mistake. My second was assuming the love I felt at the beginning would survive the meticulous, spreadsheet-driven erosion of the years that followed. Val, I set my fork down. I'm not arguing with you. I'm telling you I need a night. I've had a terrible day, and my boss spent 45 minutes telling me I'm not performing at the level they need. My project is underfunded and overcomplicated, and I came home to a text message that's basically a red invoice from my wife, that I'm exhausted. Your job situation is separate from our agreement. Could you just... I stopped myself, shook my head. Could you just be my wife right now? For 5 minutes? Not my CFO. She blinked. For a moment, something flickered behind her eyes. A crack in that manufactured composure. She looked almost uncertain. Then she straightened her spine and said, "I'm not your CFO. I'm your partner. And partners hold each other accountable. You charged me for a roll of paper towels last week. It was 62 cents. Because you used 3 sheets instead of 2. The household average is 3 sheets. I used 3 sheets of paper towel. 62 cents. I was laughing now, but there was nothing happy about it. Jesus, Valerie, do you even hear yourself? She didn't answer. She just stared at me with that flat, unreadable expression she perfected over 3 years of marriage. I looked at the microwave clock. 10:58 p.m. I'll transfer the money tonight, I said, but I'm going to take a shower first. I need to decompress. I pushed back from the island and walked to the bathroom. I could feel her eyes on me the whole way. The hot water did nothing to loosen the knot in my shoulders. I stood under the spray for 20 minutes, letting it run over me, and thought about the life I'd chosen. 3 years ago, I'd walked away from everything. Reed Technologies, the company I'd built from nothing, the one that employed 600 people and generated more revenue than most countries. My father's inheritance, the trust fund that had been growing since I was 16, the penthouse overlooking the bay, the cars. The private equity portfolio that threw off enough passive income to support a small army. I left it all behind because I wanted to know if anyone could love me. Not the money, not the power, not the name. My last serious girlfriend had been a shark in sheep's clothing. She drained nearly $200,000 from my personal accounts before I caught her, and that was the one I thought was different. So I'd reinvented myself. Anthony Reed, the code jockeyed, and I got a job at a mid-tier software firm that I rented a studio apartment. I ate takeout from food trucks and shopped at Target. I lived like a normal person for the first time in my life. And then I met Valerie. She never asked what I'd done before. She never pressed about family. She was just there, present. She seemed to want me for who I was. Now I was paying her rent to sleep in her guest bedroom because we'd stopped sharing a bed about 8 months ago after I'd tried to initiate intimacy and she'd informed me that her monthly emotional availability quota had been met. I turned off the water and stepped out. When I returned to the living room, Valerie was sitting on the couch with her laptop open. She was wearing her silk robe, the expensive one she'd bought at a boutique I'd never heard of. She looked up as I entered. "The transfer. You said before your shower." I said before midnight. "It's 11:42. Then you've got 18 minutes. I walked past her to the bedroom I'd been relegated to. "I'll do it when I've got my phone." "I don't trust you to remember." I stopped mid-step, turned. She didn't trust me. 3 years of marriage, 0.3 years of following her rules, paying her fees, swallowing my pride, 0.3 years of watching her treat me like a tenant she happened to be married to. And the moment I asked for a few hours of breathing room, she didn't trust me to honor a payment schedule I'd never once missed. "Valerie," my voice came out flat. "I have never missed a payment. I have never been late. I have never contested a single line item on any of your spreadsheets. And you're telling me, to my face, that you don't trust me to transfer $700 by midnight. It's not about trust. It's about procedure. We're not a bank. We're a family. A family that functions on clear agreements." She closed her laptop and set it aside. "I'm not the one who broke the pattern, Anthony. You are. You decided tonight that the rules didn't apply to you because you'd had a hard day. That's not how this works." "Fine." I pulled my phone out of my pocket. "I'll do it now." The app took a moment to load. I entered the amount she'd specified, $797.55 exactly, and hit send. The confirmation screen popped up. "There." Satisfied. "Very." I was about to say something ugly and honest, when the front door buzzer rang. Valerie's eyebrows shot up. "Who's that at this hour? Did you order something?" "No." She walked to the intercom and pressed the button. "Yes." "Valerie, it's Jeremy from Building Security." The voice crackled through the speaker. "I'm sorry to bother you this late, but there's a situation downstairs. Officer from the county sheriff's office wants to speak with you." Valerie turned to me, her expression unreadable. "Did you do something?" "I haven't done anything except pay your occupancy fee." We both went down to the lobby in awkward silence. The security guard was waiting near the elevators, and next to him stood a woman in a sheriff's department uniform. She had a folder tucked under one arm and an expression that said she'd rather be anywhere else. "Valerie Hayes?" "Yes." The sheriff's deputy handed her a document. "You've been served. It's regarding a civil complaint filed against you by a third party." Valerie's face went pale. "What kind of complaint?" "Appears to be financial in nature. You'll need to contact the court for further details." I was standing right next to her, close enough to see the document clearly. It listed a plaintiff's name, Heather Anderson. I didn't recognize the name. Valerie did, though. I could tell by the way her jaw tightened and her hand trembled slightly as she held the paper. "Who is Heather Anderson?" I asked. "Nobody." She folded the document and shoved it into her robe pocket. "It's a mistake. It's a legal summons, Val. That's not a mistake. Who is she?" She didn't answer. She just walked back toward the elevator, leaving me standing in the lobby with the deputy and the security guard. We didn't speak on the way back up. We didn't speak when she locked the door behind us. She went straight to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of wine that I leaned against the counter and watched her. Heather Anderson, I said again. Who is she? Valerie took a long sip of her wine. She's an ex-employee from my old job. She filed a wrongful termination claim. It's nothing. The sheriff's office delivered it at midnight. That's not nothing. She's been harassing me for months. She has a history of filing frivolous complaints against former employers. Against former employers or against you? Valerie set her glass down harder than necessary. The wine sloshed. Why does this matter to you? It's not your problem. It's my issue. My expense. My name on the paperwork. Because I'm your husband. She laughed. It was a small, brittle sound. My husband. Right. Don't do that. Something inside me was beginning to crack. The exhaustion and the humiliation and the 62-cent paper towels had built up a pressure I hadn't realized was there. Don't pretend like the word means nothing just because it's inconvenient for your spreadsheet. She set the glass down and straightened. You know, it is exhausting. The constant emotional neediness that I made an agreement with you, Anthony, a system. And every single time I ask you to follow it, you make me the villain. I asked for one night. And I asked for accountability. Which one of us is the villain now? I stared at her. And in that moment, I realized something I'd been avoiding for 3 years. Valerie didn't love me. She'd never loved me. She'd loved the agreement, the structure, the transaction. I wasn't her husband. I was her tenant, her project, her willing victim. Okay, I said. Okay, what? Okay, I see. I walked to the door. She set the glass down and followed me into the hall. Where are you going? Out. I grabbed my coat and wallet from the hook by the door. You can't just leave. We haven't finished this conversation. Yes, Valerie, I think we have. I opened the door and stepped out into the hall. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me. You're going to pay for this in the morning. You know that, right? The emotional withdrawal penalty. What's that one this week? 300, 400, 500. It's in the agreement. Of course it was. Good night, Valerie. I pressed the elevator button. The elevator arrived. I stepped in. She watched me disappear behind the closing doors. I leaned against the wall and exhaled. I wasn't going for a walk. I wasn't going to blow off steam. I was going to call my lawyer. The parking garage was quiet at 12:15 a.m. that I walked to my car, a 4-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door, and sat in the driver's seat. The engine was cold. The air was cold. Everything was cold. I pulled out my second phone. Not the one Valerie knew about. The burner. The one I'd kept locked in a safe deposit box for the last 3 years. It had a single number saved in its contacts. I dialed. It rang once. Anthony. The voice on the other end was hoarse, a little confused, but already shifting into professional mode. It's midnight. What happened? Stephen, I need you to listen. Stephen Parker was my best friend. He was also my attorney, my CFO, and the only person on earth who knew who I really was. He'd helped me construct this entire elaborate fiction 3 years ago, under protest. He said it was a stupid idea. He said I was running away from my own life instead of confronting it. He was right. I knew that now. Go ahead. I'm ending it. My voice was steady. The experiment. The hiding. The pretending to be someone I'm not. Good. I heard him sit up. But that's not why you're calling me at midnight, is it? Something happened. Someone named Heather Anderson just served Valerie with a lawsuit. Wrongful termination. The pause on the other end was like a held breath. Finally, Stephen said, Heather Anderson? Yeah. You know her? I know her because I read her deposition last year. She didn't sue billionairehis. She sued the medical supply company where Valerie worked, and she named Valerie as one of the individual defendants in a sexual harassment complaint. The company settled and ordered Valerie to undergo. Not the wrong termination? She never filed that. The claim was harassment and retaliation. I was silent for a long time. Then I said, Valerie lied. Valerie lied, Stephen confirmed. And she hid it from you. The pieces shifted in my mind. I could feel them clicking into place, revealing a picture I hadn't wanted to see. How deep does this go? Depends what you mean. How much money has Valerie transferred out of our shared accounts since we got married? Specifically, how much of that money went to other people? Stephen was quiet for a moment. I heard keys clicking in the background. Let me pull some records. I'll need access to your personal accounts, but since I'm authorized. You're authorized. Get me everything. And then what? I looked at the rearview mirror. My own face stared back at me, tired, hollow, angry, but also something else. Something that looked like relief. Then I'm going to make her explain every single cent. Anthony. Stephen's voice was careful. Are you prepared for what you might find? I've been prepared for 3 years, Stephen. I just didn't want to admit it. All right. I heard his fingers flying across a keyboard. I'll start with the bank records. What do you want me to do with the business accounts? The business accounts stay private. I'm not giving her access to those. Then, what's your plan? I thought about the question. 3 years of hiding, 3 years of keeping my head down, 3 years of letting someone else dictate the rules of my life. That was over. Steven, I started the engine. I'm going to get a hotel tonight. I'm going to sleep for the first time in months. And tomorrow, I'm going to start the process of reclaiming my life. Meaning I'm going to stop being the person she expects me to be. I found a Marriott 5 miles away and checked in at 1 a.m. The room was small and impersonal, exactly what I needed. I stripped off my clothes, lay on the bed, and stared at the ceiling. I'd built Reed Technologies from nothing. When I was 24, I'd coded the prototype in a 1-bedroom apartment and eaten ramen for 6 months. By 28, I'd sold my first company for 9 figures, BY 31. I was a name in the business sections, BY 35. I was tired. Tired of the sharks. Tired of the people who saw me as a target. Tired of pretending love could exist without money attached to it. So I'd walked away. I told myself I was testing the universe, that if I found a woman who loved me when I had nothing, I'd know it was real. But I hadn't considered the possibility that I'd find a woman who would treat me like a transaction anyway. I thought about the Heather Anderson document, the claim Valerie had lied about. What else was she lying about? Who was paying her? Who else was in her orbit? I closed my eyes. Tomorrow, I would stop being the Anthony Reed she expected. Tomorrow, I'd start being the one she'd never seen coming. The alarm went off at 7 a.m. I showered, dressed, and sat at the desk with my phone. Steven had already sent the first batch of data. Valerie's account records. I started scrolling. Year 1, 12 separate transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. Total, $4,200. Year 2, 23 transfers. Total, $11,500. Year 3, so far 18 transfers. Total, $8,600. All of them with consistent payee names. LM, SD, MB. All of them happening on the same pattern, a transfer out of our shared household account within 72 hours of my monthly occupancy fee deposit. Valerie wasn't covering household expenses with my money. She was funding someone else. I picked up the phone. Steven, you saw it. I saw it. Who are these people? Working on it, but I found something else, Anthony. Something bigger. What? Valerie has been maintaining a separate account at a different bank when she didn't disclose on our financial disclosure forms. She's been depositing money into it consistently for 2.5 years. How much? I'll have a full total by noon, but initial estimates put it around $80,000. I felt the air go out of me. $80,000. She'd been saving my money, her money, she'd probably call it, in an account I didn't know existed, building a secret fund, planning something. She's setting up her exit, I said. I think she's already set it up. She's just waiting to pull the trigger. Then I guess I'd better pull it first. The second half of that decision was already taking shape in my mind. I want to serve her with divorce papers by the end of the week. You're sure? She kept me around to fund her secret life, Steven. She treated me like a utility, a resource. That's not a partnership. That's exploitation. And the company stays with me. The wealth stays with me. She doesn't get a single share. The prenup you signed is an agreement she drafted, and I'm going to make sure the court sees exactly how she drafted it and what those hidden accounts mean for the concept of good faith in marital negotiation. Anthony. Steven was quiet for a moment. I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you prepared for what happens when this goes public? Public. She's not going to stay quiet. She'll spin it. She's already built a narrative in her head where she's the victim. I thought about that. Valerie, standing in the kitchen with her wine glass and her spreadsheets, telling everyone who would listen that she'd been betrayed by a man who couldn't keep his promises. I could almost hear the words. But I knew something she didn't. I knew who I really was. And I knew what I was capable of. I'm done hiding, Steven. I stood up from the desk and walked to the window. The city was spread out below me, gray and glinting under the morning sun. If she wants to fight, she'll have to fight the real Anthony Reed, not the one she thinks she knows. I'll start the paperwork. Get me the final numbers on that account. I want to see her face when I read them out in the deposition. You're going to file for divorce and contest the prenup? No, I smiled. I'm going to let her think the prenup is safe. And then I'm going to show the court that she hid $80,000 from me in a secret account. Let her explain that. That's your card. That's my only card. Good morning, Anthony. I turned from the window. The city was spread out beneath me, alive with billions of people, each running their own scheming, lying, bargaining game. And I was done with mine. I smiled at my reflection in the glass. Good morning, world. I'm back. The Marriott coffee was mediocre, but I drank 3 cups of it anyway. I was on my second when Steven's name flashed on my phone. I have names, he said. No preamble. That was Steven. He was the only person I knew who treated time like a finite resource he was determined to spend efficiently. Give them to me. L.M.I.S. Lucas Mitchell, 34. Personal trainer at a gym called Ironworks in the financial district. He's been receiving monthly payments from Valerie's account for 18 months. Total, roughly $12,000. I set the coffee down. A personal trainer. Not just any personal trainer. He's got a record. 2 DUIs, 1 misdemeanor assault charge that got dropped. He's a liability. But Valerie's been paying him like he's a consultancy. $12,000. For what? Training sessions. That's the question that I looked into his social media. He's got an Instagram full of gym selfies and sponsored supplement posts. Nothing that explains why a medical supply manager would be funneling money to him unless what? Unless she's not paying him for training. The implication hung in the air between us. I could feel my jaw tightening. $12,000 over 18 months. That wasn't a few extra sessions. That was a pattern. Keep going. Who are the others? Simon Davenport. He's a real estate agent. He sold Valerie's grandmother's house 2 years ago, the one she inherited and used to buy the condo. But I found something odd. The sale price was listed at $325,000, but the county records show the actual transaction went through $4,340,000. Someone pocketed the difference. Valerie. Or Simon. But here's the kicker. Valerie's been sending him irregular payments totaling about $4,500 over the last year, and explanation on her bank statements. Just memo lines like consulting and services. Services. Right. I leaned back in my chair. And MB. Melanie Brooks. She's a name I actually recognize. She's an admin at the law firm that handled Valerie's company's sexual harassment settlement. The one with Heather Anderson. My mind was clicking through the connections. Valerie had been paying the assistant at the law firm that managed her harassment case. She'd been paying a real estate agent who might have skimmed money off a property sale. She'd been paying a personal trainer with a criminal record. This wasn't just a secret savings account. This was a network. Stephen, I need you to get me every communication record between Valerie and these 3 people. Emails, texts, anything. I want to know what she's buying. Already on it. But Anthony, I've got something else. Something that might change your timeline. I'm listening. The harassment complaint from Heather Anderson, it named Valerie as the primary person creating a hostile work environment. It alleged that Valerie was in a relationship with a superior at the company, and when the superior ended it, Valerie retaliated against Heather for witnessing the affair. The company settled, but the terms required Valerie to undergo mandatory management training and to have no further contact with the plaintiff. That's why she lied to you. If you'd known about the affair, I would have asked questions she didn't want to answer. Exactly. I looked out the window. The city was waking up, full of people who had no idea what was about to happen to one of their own. Stephen, I want to file the divorce petition today, but I want to do it quietly. No press releases, no public announcements. Let me confront her first. Let her think she can control the narrative. And then I'll decide if she deserves a warning or a full-scale war. I drove back to the condo at 9:30 a.m. Valerie would be at work by now. I had her schedule memorized. She'd been bragging about it for months. 10 a.m. meetings, 1300 lunch break, etc. She wouldn't be home until at least 7. I had the keys. I let myself in. The place was immaculate, as always. Her cleaning system had a spreadsheet. I'd seen it once. She'd given me the cleaning schedule and asked me to sign off on my portion of the chores. I hadn't signed anything. I'd just started doing the dishes and vacuuming without acknowledgement, which she'd accepted as compliance. I went to the home office, the second bedroom she'd converted into her workspace. The filing cabinet was locked. I'd never had a key, but I'd also never needed one. The lock was cheap. A paperclip from her desk drawer took care of it in 30 seconds. Inside, I found what I'd expected: financial records, tax documents, a few personal letters, and a manila folder labeled A. Read, Confidential. My stomach turned. I pulled it out. Inside were copies of my bank statements, the ones for the joint account we shared. But there were also copies of my credit card statements from my personal card, the one she wasn't supposed to have access to. She'd somehow gotten the statements mailed to her address. She'd been tracking my spending for years. In the back of the folder, a handwritten note. Anthony's monthly average, $4, $200, housing costs $797.55, groceries $320, entertainment $190, miscellaneous $2, $892.45. The pattern: he doesn't save, he doesn't invest. He lives paycheck to paycheck, despite claiming otherwise. Need to verify income source. Suspect he's hiding something. I stared at the words. She'd been tracking me, compiling data, trying to figure out where my money came from because she'd noticed the disconnect between my modest salary and my lack of financial stress. I'd been careful, but not careful enough. She'd sent something off and she'd been building a case. She wasn't just a schemer. She was a detective. I slid the folder into my jacket and took a photo of every page with my phone. Then I closed the cabinet, relocked it, and went to the bedroom I'd been using. My personal things were still there. Clothes, a few books, my laptop. I started packing. I had no intention of coming back. As I was zipping up my duffel, my phone buzzed. Valerie. I let it ring. She called again. I let it ring again. Then a text. Where are you? You didn't come home last night. I'm concerned. Concerned. Right. I typed back. Had a late meeting. Crashed at a hotel. I'll be home tonight. A lie. But I wasn't ready to show my hand yet. She responded. We need to talk about your behavior. You can't just disappear in the middle of an argument. It's disrespectful. I almost laughed. Disrespectful. She'd been tracking my personal finances, funneling money to a trainer with a criminal record, and hiding a sexual harassment complaint from me, and she was accusing me of disrespect. I pocketed the phone and finished packing. Stephen met me at a diner 2 blocks from his office. He was already at a booth when I walked in, surrounded by papers and a laptop that looked like it had seen better days. Anthony. He gestured for me to sit. Good. I've got more. Give me the short version. Lucas Mitchell, the trainer, has been texting Valerie daily for the last 6 months that I got access through some creative methods. He pushed a tablet toward me. Here's a sample. Can't wait to see you Friday. You looked amazing tonight. I know we're being careful, but I'm tired of hiding. I scrolled through the messages. They were intimate. They were explicit. They were exactly what I'd feared. They're sleeping together. At least since October, probably longer. And here's the part that's going to hurt. She's been telling him she's going to leave you, just waiting for the right moment. He's so oblivious. It's almost sad. I've been saving up, and once I've got enough, I'm out. I'd heard her say those exact words, or versions of them, when she thought I wasn't listening. She'd been planning her exit for months. The real estate agent, Davenport, he's been helping her move money, the $340,000 sale of her grandmother's house. She pocketed $15,000 over the reported amount and didn't declare it. He helped her conceal it, and he's been giving her tips on how to structure the payments to avoid tax flags. So she's been building a war chest. She's been building a war chest, and she's been sleeping with her personal trainer. And she's been doing it all while making you pay rent to live in her condo. I set the tablet down. I didn't feel angry. I felt tired. The exhaustion of 3 years of pretending had finally caught up with me. Stephen, I want to file for divorce. And I want to file for a temporary restraining order. She's got access to my personal information, and I want it stopped. On what grounds? On the grounds that she's been systematically draining our shared accounts to fund a secret relationship and a hidden savings plan. I'm not going to let her drain anything else. Anthony, you're going to need to show the court that the prenup is invalid or unenforceable. That's going to be hard. She drafted it. I know. I leaned forward. But she drafted it based on a misrepresentation of her financial situation. She didn't disclose the hidden account. She didn't disclose the secret payments. If she'd been honest, I would never have signed it. That's a strong argument. But you'll need evidence that she knew the account existed at the time of the signing. She opened it 2 months after we got married. That's in the records. She was already concealing assets during the early stages of the marriage. That's fraud. Stephen nodded slowly. All right, I'll file the petition, but I'm going to need you to stay away from her until the papers are served. No contact, no confrontation. Let the legal process do its work. And if she contacts me, tell her you're taking some space. Don't mention the divorce. Don't mention the accounts. Let her assume you're just angry about the argument. Keep her in the dark. I agreed. I had no intention of confronting her until everything was in place. The next 2 days were a blur of lawyers' offices and courthouses. Stephen filed the petition on Thursday morning. The papers were served to Valerie at her office by a process server at 11 a.m. I wasn't there. I was at a hotel, waiting for the phone call. It came at 12:07 p.m. What the hell did you do? Her voice was shaking, not with sadness, with fury. I filed for divorce, Valerie. You knew this was coming. I knew no such thing. We had a disagreement. That doesn't mean you get to. It's not about the disagreement. It's about the $15,000 you've been sending to your personal trainer, the $12,000 you've been funneling through a real estate agent, and the $80,000 you've been hiding in a secret savings account. You've been planning your exit for months. I'm just accelerating the timeline. Silence on the other end. I could picture her, standing in the middle of her office, probably alone, jaw tight, face red. You've been looking at my accounts. Your accounts? The ones you opened without telling me? The ones you funded with money from our shared household budget? Those accounts. Anthony, you don't understand. That money was for what, Valerie? For your escape plan? For your new life with Lucas? I've seen the texts. I know what you've been doing. She didn't deny it. She was too smart for that. Instead, she shifted tactics. If you're going to divorce me, then you'd better be ready to follow the prenup. You signed it, you agreed. The condo is mine. Your share of the shared assets is minimal. You'll walk away with nothing. Nothing. I laughed. Is that what you think I have? Nothing? Anthony, you have a $85,000 salary and a modest 401k. The house is in my name. The furniture is mine. You don't have. I don't have a $85,000 salary, Valerie. Silence. I've been lying to you not about the money I had, but about the money I have. I've been pretending to be someone I'm not for 3 years because I wanted to know if you could love me without the wealth, and you couldn't. You loved the agreement, the structure, the transaction. But you couldn't love me. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that Reed Technologies, the company you've never heard of, is mine, that I founded it. I sold it for 9 figures. I'm worth more than you've ever imagined. And that prenup? It's not going to help you because it was based on a fraudulent misrepresentation of your own financial situation. You hid assets from me. You lied to me. And now you're going to answer for it. I could hear her breathing, short, shallow, panicked. You're lying, she said finally. You're just saying that to scare me. I'm not lying. Check the records. Check the business filings. Reed Technologies is publicly traded. It's owned by a trust managed by Stephen Parker, my attorney. He's the one who helped me disappear 3 years ago. He's also the one who's going to help me make sure you don't get a single cent of my real assets. Anthony, listen to me. No, Valerie, did I listen to you for 3 years? Did I listen to you charge me rent? Did I listen to you measure out paper towels? Did I listen to you tell me I wasn't good enough? And I believed you. I believed that the problem was me, but it wasn't, it was you. I hung up. The next few hours were chaos. Valerie called 37 times, then I let them all go to voicemail. She left increasingly frantic messages, threats, pleading, ultimatums, and finally, a tearful plea to just talk. I didn't talk. Stephen called at 6 p.m. The news is spreading. She contacted her lawyer, a guy named Robert Carter. He's a shark, but he's not prepared for the kind of assets we're talking about. He's been calling me, trying to negotiate a settlement. Tell him I'll see him in court. That's going to be expensive. I don't care about the money. I care about the principle. She used me, she manipulated me, and she did it while pretending to be the virtuous partner who just wanted financial independence. Anthony, I get it. But you should know, she's already starting to spin the narrative. She's telling her friends that you're a pathological liar who created an elaborate fake identity to trap her. She's playing the victim. Let her play. I was calm now. The truth will come out. The receipts, the account records, the texts with Lucas, they'll all come out in discovery. She can spin whatever story she wants, but when the evidence is laid out, she'll have to answer for it. I'll start the discovery process. It'll take a few weeks. Take your time. I want to make sure we're thorough. After I hung up, I stood on the hotel balcony and looked at the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Below me, millions of people were living their lives, oblivious to the drama unfolding in one small corner of the world. I thought about Valerie, sitting in her empty condo, probably crying or rage texting. I thought about Lucas, the trainer, who'd probably already been told to clear out his things. I thought about the next few months, the depositions, the motions, the inevitable courtroom face-off. And then I thought about the one thing I hadn't told her. The thing I'd hidden even for myself for years. I was done hiding, but I wasn't done fighting. The first surprise came the next morning. Stephen called at 7 a.m., his voice tense. Anthony, we have a complication. What? Valerie's lawyer just filed a motion to block discovery. They're arguing that your wealth is irrelevant to the divorce settlement because the prenup was drafted based on your declared financial status. They're trying to keep the court from seeing the full extent of your holdings. Can they do that? They can try, but I've already filed a countersuit alleging fraud and misrepresentation. The judge will have to decide whether the prenup is enforceable. And here's the thing. Valerie's lawyer is good, but he doesn't know about the secret account. Not yet. I'm going to serve him with the documentation on Friday. That'll change the calculus. Friday. 2 days. 2 days. But Anthony, there's something else you need to know. I'm listening. Lucas Mitchell was arrested last night. Not by me, by the police. He was involved in a hit and run outside the gym. He was drunk and he fled the scene. He's been charged with a felony. And guess who was on the passenger side when the accident happened? I felt a cold wave wash over me. Valerie. No, she wasn't there. The passenger was a woman named Melanie Brooks, the admin from the law firm. But get this, Melanie Brooks is also the sister of Heather Anderson. You know, the woman who filed the harassment complaint. I sank into a chair. The pieces were clicking together in a way that made the picture even more dangerous than I'd imagined. So Valerie was paying the sister of the woman she harassed? That's a conflict of interest at the very least. But it gets worse. Heather Anderson herself has been making calls to my office. She wants to talk to you. She says she has information about Valerie that goes far beyond the workplace complaint. What kind of information? She won't say, but she's willing to cooperate with us if we're willing to listen. I made a decision. Set up the meeting. Today, if possible. Anthony, are you sure? She could be looking for a payout. She could be, but she could also be the key to exposing everything Valerie has been doing. I'm not going to ignore a potential witness just because she might want something. Stephen agreed. The meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. Heather Anderson was a small woman, maybe 50, with tired eyes and hands that trembled slightly when she held her coffee. She met me in a private conference room at Stephen's firm. The room was neutral, gray, designed to look like nothing. Mr. Reed. She nodded. I wasn't sure you'd come. I'm here to listen. I sat across from her. What do you have? She set her coffee down and folded her hands. I know about your divorce, that I know about the secret accounts, that I know about the trainer, the real estate agent, the administrative assistant. But that's not the half of it. I'm listening. Valerie didn't just harass me. She tried to destroy my career. She falsified documents to make it look like I'd been selling company secrets. She went to HR with fabricated evidence. The only reason I got the settlement was because I had recordings of her admitting to everything. Recordings? I was documenting my own workplace harassment. I didn't intend to use it, but when she started going after me, I had to protect myself. I have hours of audio. I leaned forward. And you're willing to share these with us? I'm willing to share them on one condition. Name it. I want my side of the story told. I've spent 2 years being branded a troublemaker, a liar. I want the truth to come out. If you can use the recordings to discredit Valerie in the divorce proceedings, I'll give you everything. Done. Heather pulled a small USB drive from her pocket and slid it across the table. This is the complete collection, but I've also got emails, texts, copies of documents. You'll find it's far more damning than just a harassment complaint. I took the drive. Heather, I appreciate this, but I have to ask, why now? Why wait until now to share this? She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something like pity in her eyes. Because I know what she did to you, Mr. Reed, and I know what she's capable of. She didn't just lie to you. She built a whole system of lies, and she used you to fund it. You were the moneymaker. The patsy, the one who was supposed to pay for her escape while she fed the machine. I sat back. The machine? I repeated. All those people, Lucas, Simon, Melanie, they're not just side actors, they're part of an organization. Valerie's been running a scheme for years. She's been using her position to identify vulnerable people, extract money, and disappear. You're not her first victim. You're just the most successful one. My heart was hammering now. What are you saying? I'm saying she's done this before. At least 3 times that I know of. Different cities, different identities. She's a professional. I looked at the USB drive in my hand, and for the first time, I realized that I hadn't been the victim of a bad marriage. I'd been the target of a long game con, and I was still only beginning. The USB drive Heather gave me sat on the hotel desk like a live grenade. I stared at it for an hour before I plugged it in. The recordings were worse than I'd imagined. Heather had documented everything, every meeting, every phone call, every passive-aggressive email. Valerie's voice was crisp and professional, even when she was threatening to have Heather blacklisted from the entire medical supply industry. But the most damaging file wasn't audio. It was a scanned document, a letter Valerie had written to a former employer in Seattle under a different name, demanding payment for services rendered. The letter was signed Veronica Hart. Valerie Hayes wasn't her real name. I called Stephen at 11 p.m. We've got identity fraud. She's used at least 2 other names. I need you to run a full background check on her social security number. Already started, Stephen said. I pulled her employment history. She's worked at 6 different companies in 12 years, and every single one has a pattern. She gets hired, she rises quickly, and then she leaves under a cloud of complaints. And guess what? She's been married before, twice. Married, both ended in divorce. Both men claimed she drained their accounts and disappeared. One of them filed a police report, but nothing came of it. She'd already skipped town. I leaned back in my chair. So she's a serial con artist. Professional grade. She finds men with decent incomes, isolates them, builds a system of control, and then extracts as much as she can before moving on. You are just the latest mark, and unfortunately for her, the one with the most hidden assets. Unfortunately for her, I repeated. Stephen, I want to go to the police. This isn't just a divorce anymore. This is criminal. Agreed, but let's be strategic. If we go to the police now, she'll have time to disappear. I say we let her think she's still negotiating. Let her lawyer think we're just fighting over money. Keep her in the dark until the judge has seen everything. I agreed. The plan was set. The next 2 weeks were a chess match. Valerie's lawyer, Robert Carter, filed motion after motion, trying to block discovery, trying to seal records, trying to paint me as an unstable husband who'd fabricated evidence out of spite. Stephen countered every move with a stack of documents that grew taller by the day. But I knew something Valerie didn't. I'd hired a private investigator, a former FBI agent named Diane Foster. She'd spent 14 years tracking financial fraudsters, and she'd seen Valerie's pattern before. By the end of week 1, she'd found the other 2 victims. Mark Brennan, a contractor from Phoenix. He'd married Valerie Collins in 2012. She drained his savings and left him with $40,000 in credit card debt. David Shun, a pharmacist from San Diego. He'd married Valerie West in 2016. She'd taken his retirement account and disappeared 6 months later. Both men had been too embarrassed to pursue her. Both had assumed they were the only ones. I had Diane reach out to them. They were hesitant at first, ashamed, suspicious, but when they saw the evidence I'd compiled, they agreed to testify. We were building a case that would send her to prison. The pretrial hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning. I walked into the courtroom with Stephen at my side, carrying 4 boxes of evidence. Valerie was already seated at the defendant's table, flanked by Robert Carter. She looked different, hollow, dark circles under her eyes, her usual composure cracked. When she saw me, her face twisted. Anthony. She said my name like it was a curse. Valerie. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia Lang, called the session to order. Carter rose first, arguing that my financial records were irrelevant because the prenup clearly stated that all assets acquired before marriage were separate. Stephen stood. Your Honor, the prenup was signed under fraudulent circumstances. The defendant misrepresented her financial situation, her employment history, and even her identity. We have evidence that she was married twice before under false names and that she used those marriages to extract money from her victims. This isn't a divorce case. It's a criminal conspiracy. Carter sputtered. Your Honor, this is a smear campaign. Stephen handed the judge a binder. Exhibits through bank statements, travel records, and sworn affidavits from 2 previous victims. Also, a letter from the Seattle Police Department indicating they've reopened an investigation into a fraud case involving the defendant under the name Veronica Hart. The judge flipped through the binder. Her expression hardened. Mr. Carter, I'm going to allow discovery, and I'm going to request that the district attorney's office be notified. This court does not take fraud lightly. Valerie's face went white. The trial began 3 weeks later. The courtroom was packed. Reporters had gotten wind of the story. Billionaire disguised as ordinary man duped by serial con artist, and they were eating it up. I'd asked Stephen to keep my identity sealed as long as possible, but the cat was out of the bag, and my face was on every news site. Valerie had hired a new lawyer, a high-priced defense attorney named Margaret Chin. She was good, but she was fighting an uphill battle. The prosecution, led by the DA's office, presented a mountain of evidence: bank records showing the secret account, text messages with Lucas, the forged documents from Heather's case, and then the testimony of Mark Brennan and David Chin. Mark was the first to take the stand. He was a heavy-set man in his 40s, his voice shaking as he described how Valerie Collins had isolated him from his friends, drained his accounts, and vanished. She was so convincing, he said. She made me feel like I was the only person in the world, and then she took everything. David Chen's testimony was even more damning. He'd been a pharmacist, stable and cautious, but she convinced him to invest in a joint venture that never existed. He'd lost his entire retirement. The courtroom was silent as the last of the testimony concluded. Then Valerie took the stand in her own defense. She'd clearly prepared. She was composed, articulate, wearing a conservative blazer and minimal makeup. She spoke directly to the jury, her voice soft and measured. I'm not a con artist, she said. I made mistakes that I had bad relationships, but everything I did because I was afraid that I grew up in poverty. My mother was a single parent, and we were always one paycheck away from homelessness. I swore I'd never let that happen to me. I became obsessed with security, with control. Yes, I lied about my past. Yes, I hid money, but I never intended to hurt anyone, that I was just trying to survive. It was a good performance. I could see some of the jurors softening. But then Stephen cross-examined her. Ms. Hayes, or should I say Ms. Hart or Ms. Collins, you've used multiple identities. You've been married 3 times, including to my client. You've drained each husband's finances. You've fled each state. Is that all just trying to survive? Valerie's composure cracked. I didn't drain anyone. Exhibit 34. Stephen held up a bank statement. You transferred $12,000 to Lucas Mitchell in 6 months. What did you get for that money? He was my trainer. You were sleeping with him. We have text messages. Do you deny it? Valerie's eyes flicked to the jury. No, I had an affair. That doesn't make me a criminal. Maybe not, but lying to your husband about his mother's medical bills, that's fraud. Charging him rent while you were secretly funneling money to another man, that's embezzlement. And forging documents to frame a coworker, that's criminal misconduct. Heather's recordings were played for the courtroom. Valerie's voice, cold and calculating, threatening to destroy Heather's career. I'll make sure you never work in this city again, the recording said. The jury stared at Valerie with undisguised disgust. She had no rebuttal. The verdict came back after 2 days of deliberation. Guilty on all counts: fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, and forgery. The judge sentenced her to 10 years in state prison, with restitution totaling $380,000, the combined amount she'd stolen from me and the other victims. As the bailiff led her away, she turned to look at me. Her eyes were wet, but there was no remorse in them, only rage. You think you've won, she hissed. You think this makes you better than me? You're just as broken as I am. You hid your real self for 3 years. You lied to me every single day. At least I knew who I was. She was right in a way. I had lied. I had hidden. I had constructed a false identity because I was afraid of being used. But I'd learned something from this mess. I'd learned that trust wasn't something you tested. It was something you built slowly over time. And I'd learned that running from who you were only made you vulnerable to people who would exploit that fear. I walked out of the courtroom without looking back. The days that followed were strange. The media frenzy died down eventually. I hired a PR firm to manage my public image, but honestly, I didn't care much about what people thought. I'd spent 3 years caring too much about what one person thought, and it had nearly destroyed me. I moved back into the penthouse I'd abandoned. IT felt hollow at first. Too big, too clean, too silent, but I started filling it with things that mattered. Books I'd wanted to read. A piano I'd learned to play as a kid. Photos of my parents, who'd passed years ago. And I started reaching out to people I'd cut off. My old friends from the university. My business partners who thought I'd gone crazy. They welcomed me back without judgment. Anthony, we always knew you'd come back, one of them said. You just needed to get lost to find your way. One evening, Stephen came over for dinner. We ordered takeout, something I'd never done in that apartment, and sat on the terrace overlooking the city. So, he said, what's next? Rebuilding the company? Taking over the world? I laughed. Something simpler. I'm thinking of starting a foundation, point one, that helps victims of financial abuse. People who've been conned by partners or family members that I've got resources. Might as well use them. Admirable. But I meant personally. Dating, relationships. I shook my head. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I need to figure out who I am without a partner defining me. And you're okay with that? I looked out at the skyline. The city was a grid of lights, each one a story, a possibility. I'm okay with it, I said. For the first time in years, I'm okay with it. A month later, I received a letter. It was from Valerie, sent from prison through her lawyer. The handwriting was shaky, but legible. Anthony, I know you'll never forgive me. I don't expect you to, but I want you to understand something. I never set out to hurt you. When I met you, I was already deep in my pattern, and I didn't know how to stop. You were kind, patient, everything I'd never had, but I was so broken that I couldn't trust kindness. I could only trust control. I'm writing this to say I'm sorry. Not because I think it will change anything, but because I've started therapy in here, and they told me I need to own what I did. So I'm owning it. I wish I'd met you when I was a different person. Maybe we could have had something real. Maybe not. But I want you to know that the woman who loved you, even for a moment, did exist. She just got buried under all the fear. I hope you find what you're looking for. Valerie. I read the letter twice. Then I folded it and put it in a drawer. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She'd said her piece. I'd said mine. The story was over. A few weeks later, I got a call from Heather Anderson. She'd been hired by a nonprofit that advocated for workplace fairness. She thanked me for helping her get justice. Anthony, she said, I know you're starting that foundation. If you ever need a director, I'm available. I smiled. I'll keep that in mind. I hung up and walked to the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold. Down below, the city was alive with people, each one carrying their own secrets, their own lies, their own redemptions. I'd started this journey looking for proof that love could exist without money. I'd ended it learning that love, real love, couldn't exist without trust, and trust required vulnerability, honesty. The willingness to show someone who you really were, even if they might reject you. I'd spent 3 years pretending to be someone else, afraid of being rejected for my wealth. But I've been rejected anyway for my willingness to give, my patience, my belief in something better. That wasn't a weakness. That was strength. I pulled out my phone and called Stephen. I'm ready, I said. Ready for what? To start the foundation, to get back into the world, to stop hiding. About damn time, he said. I'll start the paperwork. I laughed, a real laugh, the kind I hadn't felt in years. And for the first time in a long time, I looked forward to tomorrow, to understand how deep it went.